Hey everyone, welcome to the 9 to 5 podcast. I'm Josh, just popping in here for a quick intro. This conversation is part one of what we're calling a case study for Josh's my withdrawal strategy dilemma. There's a lot of numbers in this conversation, and I do some screen sharing of a spreadsheet and my Empower account, so it may be easier to follow along on our YouTube channel 9 to 5. We'll leave links for all the resources and things we mentioned in the episode. We also have affiliate or support links for some of our favorite money saving or FI related products that we use. If you have any feedback for us or suggestions for topics, please email either of us at ninetoFIpod@gmail.com. And we have specific email links for both of us if you'd like to send us something individually. We'll leave links to those in the show notes as well. Last thing, if you like this kind of content, please give us a rating on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast player. Spotify keeps telling us we should have more followers for the audience size that we have. So if you're listening to us there, we'd appreciate it if you could click follow. And with that, I'll kick it over to our conversation. For you and the audience, my situation is that I have retired I'm 48. I retired earlier this year, left full-time work in April of 2025. My wife still works full-time. She's also 48, and she is considering stepping down to part-time. With that means that she would step down to just 32 hours a week. So it's a small step. And she would still retain benefits. She would get her paid time off, vacation time, and all of that. All the benefits would remain the same. We were talking a couple of weeks ago about if she were to make this move, what would this do to our finances from basically an income perspective. I'm going to share my screen here. I did put together a couple of things here to kind of spell things out. This would be step one, and this is current day. From a cash perspective, going back to your comment earlier there, Elliot, sitting on that pile of cash, we do currently have about $87K in cash in a high yield savings account. This is our emergency fund. It's our business buffer so some of this is in our business accounts. It's our buffer for real estate, and it's remained fairly flat since April whenever I left full-time work. We have drawn from it some over the course of the last 6 months. We spent down about $9,000. We helped the kids with a few things. We did some traveling, and we've replenished it with some real estate cash flow, which I'll get to in a minute.
All
Currently,
right, you'll hence be known as Smog.
what's that mean?
All right, clearly I'm the nerd in the room. That is a Lord of the Rings reference, is the dragon that sits on the pile of gold in The Hobbit. So, no, all kidding aside, no, that completely makes sense for your situation in that you guys have businesses and other things that you have to have more cash flow available for.
And just for like a reference sake, I'm okay with having less. It does help me sleep at night to have a larger amount, but I think the current amount that we have is a bit excessive. Lori is more comfortable having that and going back to my origin story, we came from really lean, very tough times. So having those larger amounts, it's just more of an emotional thing at this point. The brokerage account, which I really didn't start heavily contributing to until the last couple of years, isn't much higher than that. It's currently at 90K. So those two things combined haven't added anything to that since I left work back in April. So getting down to the income. So this is really where the question kind of comes in. And I'll go through this in a couple of steps where we have what things look like today, what things will look like if Lori drops down to part-time, and then what things would look like if she doesn't work at all. So from a net income perspective, we're just primarily living off of her income now. So on a monthly basis, she brings home about $4,156 a month for an annual of just under $50,000. And that's her net income after contributing to her 401k, maxing out the HSA, covering all the medical expenses, and then taxes. And then I'm not putting this into our monthly income right now, which is rental cash flow, but we have the potential to draw about $2,000 from that on a monthly basis. And we're just sitting on that cash right now. We're not spending it. That's why you see these cash accounts at higher levels. And then This one I list on here a little tongue in cheek is part-time work. Whenever I set out to leave full-time work, we had some conversations where I talked about I was going to earn some level of income from part-time work. And I estimated it to be around $1,000 a month just from various small streams. And some of those do produce some cash right now, but I don't really currently rely on that with any kind of regularity. So I'm just leaving it that as zero right now. And again, if anything that I do earn from side projects just goes into cash. So total income on an annual basis is just under $50,000, like I mentioned earlier. From an expenses standpoint, I break this down in just a couple categories just for simplicity. So we currently have no debt, except for a couple of our rental properties do have mortgages on those, but I'm not including that in our monthly spend here. That's more on the business side. But for us personally, our fixed expenses are just over $1,400 a month or $17,000 a year. And those are for things like utilities, insurances, and taxes. And then our variable expenses like gas, groceries, any kind of repair and maintenance on our home or cars is about $1,175 a month or $14,000 a year. So it brings our total expenses to $2,600 a month or $31,000 a year. And then everything left over, this is kind of how we budget and why I'm kind of trying to maybe sharpen the pencil just a little bit is we've just been comfortable with knowing that we have about $4,000 coming into our bank account every month. This is what our bills are. We live fairly modestly, fairly frugal. And the $1,500 or so that is left over is discretionary. And that just typically covers most of what we do, like dining out, entertainment, clothing, things like that, and most of our travel. And I say most of our travel because we have had some larger months where we've taken some bigger trips, and then we have pulled from our large cash account to cover those higher expense months. Any questions so far with that?
I don't think so. Not so far. So what you're getting ready to tell me is she's on board, right? She's pulled the cord and she's down to 32 hours, right?
I wish it were that easy.
Just, Lori. I hope that is the decision that you come to.
I hope so too. So next step, taking it in baby steps, that's kind of how we're doing this thing here. And maybe just a kind of little tangent sidebar, when I set out on the FIRE journey, I thought Lori was going to be right there with me and ready to retire at the same moment that I was. And it was a few years in that she kind of confessed that she wasn't really as eager to leave full-time work as I was. So we kind of are on somewhat different paths now where, like I mentioned, I'm retired and she's still working, but she is interested in dropping her hours down, but it's not as easy as just going in and saying, I'm going to work one day fewer. Even though she has approval for that, she's still kind of working through that at her own pace. So I'll kind of cut to the chase on this one here and keep it pretty simple. So her net income would drop about 20%, which would bring her down to about $40,000 in annual net income. And again, that still accounts for her contributing 10% to her 401k to get the match, maxing out the HSA and covering our medical, dental, vision. So what I decided, I was like, well, let's just keep it super simple and make sure that we are paying ourselves $1,000 a month out of our rental business to bring us essentially back up to where we are today, which is just around $50,000 per year or $4,300 a month to cover our expenses. It would keep our discretionary about the same. And if we have any lumpiness, like we need to buy a new car or we're going to do some more extravagant travel, things like that don't fall into the normal day-to-day expenses, we would just pull that from our large cash account and potentially the brokerage account, but I don't see us getting anywhere near that anytime soon.
So with the rental income that you're bringing in today, right? You're saying you're bringing in 2,000 a month. You're saying today, is that viewed as completely separate from your cash and brokerage that you showed at the very top, and that's in a business account separately?
Today we're bringing in about $2,000 a month, and this is accounting for all CapEx, maintenance, taxes, insurance, and any mortgage payments that we have on the properties. This is everything that's left over. It's fairly conservative. Today we're basically just funneling that into our cash accounts, and it's just growing in those business accounts. We've only been kind of on this pace, I guess, to realize this cash flow for just like the last year, because we were purchasing, actually less than that, the last 6 months, because we purchased our last property in April, and we used some of the cash that we had built up to purchase that property. So we've been reinvesting it in the business for years. We've never had to rely on or counted it as any additional income. So this will be relatively new for us.
Right. So what I'm saying is, even in this picture right here is where you're drawing that additional, I guess, 50% of his monthly rents from the business account, essentially paying yourself more or less like a salary from the rental business itself. Is to date, where is, and even going forward, where is that other 1,000 out of this scenario going? Is that just funneled into your cash bucket that you showed above, where you had, roughly 80-90K?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So does that seem pretty reasonable, straightforward to you?
I mean, it seems very reasonable to me. I guess the question is, so let's attack this in a couple different ways. First, right? So we've got, congratulations on being Wi-Fi. I mean, you're living every marital dream, right? You and Carl, I'll tease you incessantly, but not really at all. I mean, that's fantastic, because quite frankly, even Dawn said to me last night, she's like, you can retire now, and you can be at home with the kids, and her business is taking off. So, hey, I would love to be right there next to you.
Come.
Yeah, exactly. So the second part of this is, I would say that, I mean, clearly, like, you're not even drawing down yet, right? Is when you look at your total net worth and your liquid amount, you're over the 5 amount. I know that you're confident in, I think that you're both confident that the 4% rule works. We've seen other guidance, even as of late, from Bill Bengen and others that have written to say, that was really the worst case scenario. And there's been, there's a new book coming out later this year that says that rate can be even potentially higher. So, I mean, I think you have layers of conservatism on top of each other. But all of this to say, I mean, I think this is a very reasonable baby step to say, yep, hey, let's go ahead and try it and see how we feel about it. I'm not going to poo-poo anybody for enjoying their job. If that's what lights you up in the morning every single day, more power to you. I haven't found that, but I'm glad that you have. But ultimately, I mean, like, if that makes Lori happy, then I think that's always what you should go with. And I think this is a very solid plan to test the waters. And then, still the sniff test for me is, if I was getting paid $0 to go to work, would I still show up the next day? The answer is yes, then great, keep on going. If it's not, then I don't. But yes, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'll pause there. What do you think about what I've said so far?
Yeah, I think we're in agreement, and yeah, it's taken, I mean, we've had a lot of conversations, Lori and I have, about what her timeline will look like. Right now, she doesn't necessarily know what it is. She knows she doesn't want to continue working at the same level, the same number of hours per week that she currently is. She knows that she doesn't want to work for, through traditional retirement age, but she feels that she's still pretty young and has a lot to offer, and she's still very drawn and pulled to her work. So she's happy and to continue to do it. She likes the people she works with, and she'll, I'm happy that she wants to keep doing it, because it kind of makes, from a financial perspective, it makes things a little bit easier. We don't find ourselves in a true withdrawal situation quite yet. And the money that we do have, we're kind of on a coast situation where it's just continuing to grow.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you're not into accumulation by any means. You're still in accumulation mode, and you just happen to have one less income. So,
Yep.
hey, it works. And like you said, as long as you're both happy with the situation, then hey, don't mess with what works.
That's right. So if you'll allow me to entertain you just for a couple minutes longer, I will take you through my thoughts on what it could potentially look like if Lori no longer has full-time work.
All right. Is this Lori approved?
Yes, I did run it by her. So again, nothing's changed from my perspective. This would be when she would essentially leave full-time work. Now she's got credentials that would put her in a situation where she could do some consulting work that she's talked about doing, that maybe she works a few hours a week. So I don't ever see her fully stopping work. I think she's always going to earn some type of income from some type of, call it a side hustle or whatever. But if we were to turn our attention to our income, assuming that our expenses stayed relatively the same as they are now, and we needed approximately $50,000 to just maintain our same lifestyle, I would, I guess, start to draw from currently our rental properties can throw off about $2,000 in cash a month. And then we would need to make up the difference from our investments. And like you said, we'll get to that in just a second, but this is by no means the 4% rule, but we would have to find a way to draw down approximately $30,000 a year. Now, where I get, and we can turn this into another episode at a later date, Elliot, because I know we're already probably pretty long, but this is where things start to get really complicated for me, where I just can't quite make sense of this strategy that I should use, because I know there's things like 72T, there's things like the Roth conversion ladder, but I don't know exactly which one is going to work best for our situation. All right, so now I am showing my Empower retirement planner. And Elliot, I know you used Empower, or used to be Personal Capital. You used this for, I believe, a number of years, and I think you mentioned to me lately that you've kind of stepped away from it because it's gotten to be kind of clunky. Is that right?
It got broken, and I think it's fixed again. But yes, I use Monarch Money these days.
Okay. So I'm still using Empower, and I went through a bit of an exercise recently to just make sure everything was synced properly and updated, because I already had all my accounts linked in there, and they all started behaving kind of clunky when they went through that transition from Personal Capital to Empower, but it seems to be working more smoothly now. Everybody has access to the retirement planner. It is by no means a pitch to use Empower, but it is free. And I will go ahead and give in full transparency that I have a bit of money invested with Empower that allows me to have a little bit more functionality that doesn't exist to everybody. I'll get to that in a minute. And I like some of the services that they offer. We started out with more money invested with them, but we've transferred it out, and they've allowed us to keep having this extra functionality. Right now we don't have a whole lot with them, but there's still one account that has a little bit of money in it. So this is how things look today. And I have 3 different plans over here. One is that Lori continues to work full time for a number of years. And then one is where she works part-time, and then one is where she is retired. All of our scenarios are over 90%, which they say, if I scroll down here just a little bit, it says we're in very good shape. And it essentially says you don't have anything to worry about and you should be spending more money, which is not a situation that I want to be in. I don't want to feel like I have more money than I have available to spend, because I think there's a lot of things that I still want to do in life. And I just want to make sure that I take the time now to enjoy it as much as we can.
Whatever you say, Smog.
So this is what the dashboard looks like for us, and we just input a bunch of information based on what we know now. So my current quote unquote savings, this is all of our investment accounts, not including our real estate, is about 1.4 million. And I put that we're going to continue to contribute. This is from basically from Lori's income, contribute about 10,000 a year. And then we have some assumptions built in for Social Security. And what I did is I took 70% of what the Social Security calculator projects that I will have based on no more years of income from 48 through the Social Security timeline, put zeros in all those. And then I dropped that down by 70% just to get a figure that I thought was pretty conservative, because I don't know what Social Security is going to look like in 20 years whenever I'm able to draw. So that in today's dollars, it gives us 21,000 for me, 19,000 for Lori. I put our rental income in there. I put $1 a year for work during retirement, which is kind of funny, but I used to have a higher dollar amount in there, going back to what I mentioned earlier. I thought I could make more money, and I probably still will. I don't want to rely on that. Lori does get a pension when she turns 60 from her previous employer. She worked for the state of Missouri. And so that's what it looks like in today's dollars, that she'll get about $15,000 per year, but there's a cost of living adjustment to that, just like there is with Social Security. And then I left it with her working for 4 more years. And then I'm really getting almost too conservative here. I can probably, even though I can't see you, you probably got a smirk on your face, but I put our I put our spending at 80,000 a year, just because I
Because
know
otherwise that number is like 25 million.
you might be right. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I have another scenario here, and this is running all these Monte Carlo simulations. I think it's like 5,000 calculations behind the scenes. And this, if Lori drops down to part-time, 32 hours a week, it does like literally nothing. There's no change whatsoever. But then if Lori retires, it drops down to 90%. And essentially all that means is that we give up some of the savings that we're going to have over the next couple of years, and then enter into a drawdown period. So what they offer, before I go into their withdrawal strategy here, any comments or questions on that stuff?
I have lots of comments, but I'll try and not be too spicy about them. So I imagine that you've sat down with Lori and looked at these graphs together. Is that a fair assumption?
I have done that, and we've even met with our analyst
Advisor
through
Yeah.
Empowered to do the same. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so what are her general comments or thoughts when she sees these things?
I think Lori believes in the compound interest and all of that stuff. I mean, she definitely gets that, and she sees where our money is right now. She struggles with the connection between, we have all of this net worth, how do we turn it into paying the bills every month? And so it essentially just gets back, all the way down to the withdrawal strategy. And what I want to do, I've heard Fritz Gilbert talk about just creating that monthly paycheck when you get into a withdrawal strategy situation. So, what I would like to do is, once she gets to that point where she says, hey, I don't want to work full time anymore, then we decide how much we want to have for that monthly paycheck, whether it be $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. And then we determine, how do we create that? Which levers do we pull first? What strategy do we need to use for like the building or bridging the gap between whatever age that turns out to be. If she's 51, 52, and we have to go all the way through 65, 67. Well, I guess it would actually be to 60 to get the tax deferred accounts.
59 and a half.
Yeah. But what does that, bridge look like? Because clearly you saw we don't have enough in our cash account or our brokerage account in cash or even enough rental income to satisfy that for that long of a time.
Okay. So I'll openly admit I'm a little bit behind on my ChooseFI listening as of late. So I've been slowly catching up as I don't have the car commute currently as I've been working from home. But as I've been getting caught up, I know there were a couple of episodes between ChooseFI and Bigger Pockets, Money, etc. on the middle class trap and kind of, that whole concept. But I know that, just in general, there are a lot of different ways that we can essentially get money out of retirement accounts before most people believe that they can actually get money out of retirement accounts, right? You have a lot of levers that you can pull in the fact that you have real estate, you have the 72T, you have Roth IRA, Roth conversion ladder that you could do. I think there's a lot of different directions that we can go, and maybe this is a good idea for another episode to kind of go through that in more depth, the same way that, I would probably want to do the same exercise for myself. I know that Brad recently had Jillian Johnsrud on talking about her new book that just came out. So she's made the podcast rounds a little bit, but I know one of the things that she said in her episode was, she's been, I think, basically early retired for more or less 10 years. And as I recall, and one of the things that she said is, drawing down is hard just the same way that contributing money was hard initially, right? It's a muscle that you haven't exercised. And as anybody that goes into the gym for that first time will tell you, you're not bench pressing your weight on day one. You got to work up to those bigger weights. Or in your analogy, that first 5K was probably a little bit harder than your preceding ones. But, overall is you find the step, whether that is, I know some people pull out full amount, once a year, or if it makes more sense to do it, the quote unquote dollar cost averaging of doing it monthly, or you want to do it bi-weekly, whatever frequency that you want to do to make it easier. It's fine, but I think that makes perfect sense, is to just kind of replicate the quote unquote, monthly expenses and just do it.
Yeah, I hear you. And we can certainly continue the conversation. I think I know, like, it's all kind of jumbled up in my head, and I need a little bit of assistance. I've actually looked into scheduling. I haven't actually scheduled the time, but I've looked into getting together with like a fee only advisor through Nectarine, just to have like a one-on-one for an hour. Here's all my information. What would you suggest? And because I know I have all the pieces, I know I have lots of levers to pull, but it's like there's enough complexity where it just gets confusing to me. And we're not quite, I knew this day would come. We're not quite there yet, but we just kept investing money, kept throwing money at, our maxing out our investment accounts. And I didn't really think about too much about, that gap. And I know there's a 72T, I know there's Roth conversions, I know, but what makes the most sense for our situation is a question that I have that I just can't quite wrap my head around yet. So,
sure. So, and I'll go back and try and refresh myself real briefly. So what you said is your actual cash investment number that was north of 1.4 right now.
Yep.
So even the 4% rule on that yields $56,000, which is more than your annual expenses currently. So, I mean, you could certainly live just on that. That's not counting any of your real estate that you have, any of your pensions, any Social Security. I mean, so all of that to say, I think you have plenty, is the message that I would say to you both.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good place to be.
It is. It is. It's funny that you get to this place and then you're still kind of doubting and questioning. So, I mean, hopefully this back and forth between us was helpful to the audience, and I appreciate you listening to me, and we'll keep the conversation going. And I'm really looking forward to, hopefully we can have Lori on the podcast at some point. She can talk through some of this stuff and her feelings on it. Maybe we'll have Dawn join us at some point too, and we can continue the conversation about your house journey. And yeah. Anything else, Elliot?
I don't think so. It was good catching up, Josh.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
All right. Talk to you soon.